Hello, welcome to Breaking Biscuits, the experience. Mark, today we're going to talk about program living versus process living. Stay tuned. You're going to like this. Well, Mark, welcome back to Breaking Biscuits, the experience. We've gone through the holidays and we kind of took a few weeks off, and we're back at it here in the beginning of 2026 already. And we want to zero in and focus on a kind of a subject you and I have been talking about. And we is kind of coined the term program living versus process living. And I think first, if we could maybe attempt to define what we mean by program living versus process living. But this is kind of where we all live, honestly. And it specifically, it applies to anybody, but I think men can specifically kind of apply this to their lives and kind of understand where we're coming from. So I would like to kind of just start out with the program side of it, the program living, what we mean by that. And I think this one is close to my heart because I lived this way for such a long time. And one of the descriptions is program living just means like if I do X, I'll get Y. I always think of right or wrong living. I want to fix everything from a logical, cerebral thinking perspective, fix it mode. And when I'm talking about these things, Mark, it'll be good for our audience to think about these things in the area of their relationships. So like if I'm in program mode and I'm thinking if I do X, I get Y, if I'm doing who's right or who's wrong in this relationship, if I want to listen to my wife and fix it from a logical perspective, if I perform to belong, or in other words, say it maybe perform to be loved and to be accepted. And then another one is, do I hide my weakness? Do I stand behind my strength and hide my weaknesses? And do I communicate for the sole purpose of trying to control, the outcomes? And so just thinking about that from a relationship standpoint, it's pretty easy to say that a program living is not going to probably go very well in a relationship if I do those types of things. But many of us, many men, and successful men at that, are programs. And we're programmed to live this way in our lives because we're looking for the love and acceptance, but we're programmed to go about it a certain way.
For sure. What comes to my mind is, first and foremost, we've been programmed living. It suggests that we've been programmed to live this way. So it's how we were raised. It's how our fathers were raised. It's how our parents were raised. And we tell all of our clients, that trauma or whatever system or whatever loop in your life, we call it cycles. It's going to continue because it either happened to you or it was modeled to you. But I thought of a cool thing when you were talking is we do the program living because it makes us feel safe. And it makes us feel in control. The people that want to control, they want to be safe. They're not trying to be the meanest person on the planet, but they'll be angry if they can get you off your spot. If you keep pressing on them, they don't like that. So they push you away with their anger. But I was just thinking when you were talking, is it possible that men have never sat with their emotions, or are they afraid of them? So we've been trained all of our life to not be emotional, not be soft, not be whatever. And it's been programmed from generation to generation to generation. Just 4 generations before us, they always taught us, be strong, be a man, don't be emotional, make good
Right.
decisions, be rational, be logic. But it's not working for us now. It's not working.
No, and when I was thinking about this, kind of a little different angle on it, because the word when I hear programming, I think of an actual programmer, someone that writes
Mm-hmm.
code for a
Right.
computer. And so when I think of it in those terms, like a computer programmer writes code to get a specific outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So the programming that we're living in, a programmed methodology, in our minds, we're programmed to get a specific outcome. But I think what you're saying is the outcome that we want versus the outcome that we're getting is 2 different things. But we're so programmed that we follow the script thinking we're going to get a different outcome, but we don't. We get the outcome that the programmer put in us, because that's the only outcome that can be manifested, is because it's been programmed in us. It's like a computer program. If I put a formula in an Excel spreadsheet, that formula is going to do exactly what I tell it to do. And the code that's been put in us as men is going to give us the output of that code that's been put in us. So we're living a programming code in this life as men, in our society, our culture, the way the generations have brought us up, and we just keep recycling that same code. And to me, it's time. Like, we've got to reprogram our code and rewrite the script that's giving us the outcomes that we don't want. And I think that's what we're calling a process living. Process living doesn't have a code script. You're writing the code as you go, so to speak. Does that make sense? What I'm trying
scary,
to say?
though, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary.
That would be very scary, because the program is predictable. It made me think of the Matrix movie. It's my favorite movie, by the way. And I could tell you a million things about that movie, how it relates to spirituality, but there's a man in that story that's called the architect, and he writes all the code for the whole world for people to follow. And when you're talking, it's just like, yeah, we just follow the code.
Right.
It's like the man code, but it's a program.
It is.
We go play golf with our buddies, and we have friends, and they go out and eat with friends, and they do all the things with friends. They come over and they hang out and watch the game and do all that, but there is not one smidge of vulnerability in it.
Right.
Not even a breath. And so nobody really knows anybody. And that's the program.
That's the program living, isn't it? And what's the results of that? Like, how would you describe the results of program living?
Well, it's very predictable. So, if you want an expected outcome, you have to hang out with certain people. You have to make relationships to certain things. The problem is that I think one of the problems is you told me my whole life, I'll just say it, my whole life, 28, 30, 40 years, however long we know each other. Everyone wants to be fully known and fully loved. And so there's this one little seed in our heart that says, this program living is only going to give you transactional love.
Mm-hmm.
but there's a seed in our hearts that says there's got to be more than this. It can't just be transactional. You can't just love me for what I do or what I say. I think most men that listen to this want to be loved and known for who they are. Whether they're poor as dirt or richer than God, it don't matter. They all have the same need. And that's important. But living in a program, they're never going to get there. They're never going to get out of performance. And they're never going to get out of transaction. They even have a relationship to their wife and children in a transactional way. And so we just keep reciprocating what was taught to us, mentored and modeled to us. It's kind of sad, really.
Can we talk about what you just said, the transactional with our wives? Like, can you give me kind of expound on what you mean by that?
Well, even in my own life, like, I consider myself a very awakened person. I'm keen to the spirit. I'm very much a spiritual person, but I catch myself sometimes in the really depths of my really being. Is like I secretly do some things around the house, and I have an expectation of a reward of something else, and that's at its core is transactional. So I've been training myself to be. I want to walk in the unconditional love, meaning I do what's needed around here, but just because I love, just because I don't expect anything in return. So I've had to catch myself in awareness. If we're just being honest, I mean, we might as well. It's our podcast. We can do what we want. It's like it's like buying this incredible sleepwear, nightgown, lingerie, whatever for your wife, but you're going to get the benefit.
Right.
That's transactional.
That's definitely transactional. Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I've had these conversations with my wife, and so I'm learning to sort it out, you know. Like I told her one day, I said, man, you know, we need a dishwasher. That would be a great Christmas present. Holy cow. That was the worst thing I've ever said here.
I can imagine.
That's not a present. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. That's not good. But I knew she needed one, and we needed one that would check off something off my list.
Right. Well, I don't
think men are aware that they really have a transactional. I guess that's what I'm saying is you have to really be aware of why you do what you do, you know?
Yeah, and I think the hardest part, Mark, inside of what we're talking about right now and that awareness is the communication. So it's like you're talking about doing things. Sometimes those are a little bit easier to see, but when we communicate in a fashion to get a reward or to control an outcome, which is just kind of the same thing, I think that's where I struggle the most because like I get into the fix it mode that we talked about earlier. And it's like, okay, I'll listen really intently. And then when you're done, I'll tell you how to fix it. And that's about as effective as buying a dishwasher for Christmas because like it just never works. But my logical brain and in my role in the family, I think, oh, well, I'm here to fix this stuff. But it's still programmed. It's still that program living but it's like, how do you communicate in a fashion that doesn't want something out of it? Like, how do you see that? You know, not just the deeds, but the communication part.
You have to be aware of it, and you have to be aware how it affects your mate. That's the most important thing. Like, I learned years ago that my wife didn't want me to tell me a story so I could fix it. And so what I learned to do was just listen and sit in it and support her and tell her I feel what you feel.
Mhm.
And if she asked me for advice, then I would give it.
Mhm.
And because that's how women communicate. They don't care what they're saying. They just want you to feel what they're feeling while they say it. And men are
Right.
just dumb like that. Men have already had 3 solutions while she's telling a story. And they're just, because it's a transactional 2x, I get y. And so we tell our mates that, well, if you do this, you'll get that.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I think that's
it,
that's
it, it takes a lot of awareness, a lot of communication. And the main communication is, I'm here for you. Um, but most men can't say that.
I was thinking about when you're talking about listening listening to your wife, sitting in it, and then just feeling what they feel. But if a man's living a programmed
Uh-huh.
life, he doesn't have the capacity to do that. He might try to do that, but he can't do that. You can't, in other words, you can't be living a programmed life, but listening and communicating and acting like you're in this thing called process living. Like you can't live in both worlds. You choose one or the other. And so these are not like, we're not giving people suggestions on how to respond, because
Mm-mm.
that never works, because it's not going to, they're going to, a woman will sniff that out in 2 seconds. Like they're going to say,
Mm-hmm.
you're just saying that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's when we change in our hearts and somehow transition from what you call Saul's house into
Mm-hmm.
process living, then we begin to get traction and the authenticity starts to come through and we become believable.
I hear you on the process living. Um, the reality is it's very safe and it's very predictable and it fits in with not being exposed for what's really in your heart, really. Um, but it's not working for a lot of people. That's the problem, Toby. It's just not working. Um, we have people have been married a long time and they're still barely friends and stuff like that. It's because of this process living. I mean, the program living. So I think when you go to the process living, everything changes. And that's what I was going to ask you. How do you go from program living, the way you were trained and modeled and happened to a process where you're engaging in a fluid relationship? How would you do that? What do you think about it?
That's a great question. I think what comes to my mind, there's several things. Just like anything that's difficult, there's not really one good answer, but I think there's several things. One is obviously the awareness of what you're doing doesn't work. So there's a desire to be different, a desire to change. I think a big one is just relinquishing control. Um, like, because I love what you said earlier in the podcast. Like, we do this because it makes us feel safe. And I think a lot of it is safety. And maybe we grew up in a home where we weren't, affirmed, or it was an unsafe environment. So the need for control is always the need for safety. And
That's
so
good.
I think just giving up the control and realizing that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to control the outcome. It's just resting in a place of peace, and resting in uncertainty would be another way to say it. It's just the ability to rest in uncertainty. I can tell you, for me, that is incredibly difficult. For me to find peace and rest in uncertainty. I mean, I plan everything. I live by a calendar. I have to, but
Yeah.
because of my vocation, and that's okay, but to just totally live in a place of uncertainty is incredibly difficult. And I would say it's probably difficult for most men. And I think those are some small steps that you take, but it's a transformational. That's why we call it the process living. It's a transformational process. It doesn't. You don't change overnight. It's process living. The process will change you if you allow the process to take its right place in your life.
And it's kind of like a choice you make to say, well, this program living ain't working out for me the way I want, so I'm going to step into this other world and I'm just going to trust the process. It takes an incredible amount of awareness.
Oh yeah, for sure. And here's just some things I can just bullet points I can read off that it looks like, to kind of give our audience the awareness of the difference of the two. So a process living, Mark, would be like presence over perfection. So just being present opposed to having to have everything right in your life, in your mate's life, in your relationship, in your home. Trust me, life will be okay if it's not perfect. And then I love this one, curiosity over certainty. And I think you're really good at that one. It's having a curious spirit instead of always the need to be right.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between the two. And then we talked about allowing change without knowing the end result. And then I love this one too, is staying in discomfort long enough to learn. We run from discomfort as men.
That's hard.
We hate awkwardness. That's why men struggle with hugging. We even we're a lot of it. Think about it. How many men affectionate fathers, like literally had showed affection? Not many. So we're not comfortable with hugging or saying I love you to another man. It feels awkward, and so we just won't stay in that awkward feeling state, and so we just never learn, because we want to be safe. We want to stay where we think it's safe. And then the last one here is a communication to connect, not to win. That's a big one. Think about all the coaching you do. I suspect there's a lot of couples that when they fight, what's happening is each side's trying to win their point of view. The whole purpose of communication is to come together and connect. Because if there's a winner, there's a loser. And when you're married or you're in a relationship, a long-term relationship, why do you want a winner and a loser? It's just nobody wins if there's a loser. So
it goes back to that being afraid to sit in my emotions.
Yeah.
Not really wanting to feel like. I've been to church all my life, and this is the funniest thing, and this is the top secret thing that I've observed my whole life. Men will hug each other, right? Because it's what we do, because it's church, and maybe you really got blessed and we want to pray for you, or we want to love on you or whatever. But you know what they do? They do the tri-bluster. So men will hug each other and hit each other 3 times. I swear to God. Yeah. I swear to God on my life, it always happens. And it's just we're funny creatures. That's what it is. We're just really funny, and we've been trained to be this way. Hopefully this podcast will, over time, if you listen to all of them, you'll be inspired that, you know, there's more to life than what you're living in. A lot more. I like what we talked about earlier is we learned some things along the way, how to communicate. So we learned how to avoid conflict when things didn't feel safe. And to me, that's just like shutdown.
Yeah.
So most men will either get angry to push the conversation away from them, or they just shut down still to push the conversation, because they don't want to have the conversation, because they don't understand how to feel in that moment. And they don't want to share. I don't know why you wouldn't want to share with your mate, everything that you feel, but I'm learning through coaching people that, like, when people tell me, like, you know, my husband's very angry man, and I'm just like, yeah, he's trying to protect his safety, and it was modeled to him. Yeah. That's how you control what you said. Control the situation. And the unfortunate thing is your children are collateral damage, and you are teaching them how to treat a woman.
Yeah.
And you don't want that. You do not want that. And you have a responsibility, privilege, and opportunity to break that cycle.
Yeah.
And it's super important. It's the most important thing, really. That's just my opinion. So that's what we coach couples is, we try to get to the source of the anger and all those things, and we've been very successful at it. But the reality is, I know what you're doing. You're trying to scare people away out of your space because you're afraid.
Yeah. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mark, we're going to be on this subject obviously for several weeks. We've got a lot of content on this one and a lot to share. But just as a sneak preview, I always like to bring you. You're so good at bringing a spiritual aspect to this. And so could you just spend a few minutes talking about Saul's house, Saul in the Bible, King Saul, and kind of how this fits, you know, what we've been talking about today. You can just hit the surface of it, and then we can dig into it deeper. But I think it'll be good as a prelude of some of the upcoming weeks of what we'll be talking about.
Yeah, we were sharing at one of our groups that 2 Samuel 21 talks about David, and when he finally became king, and everything was great, but they were in famine for 3 years. And so David inquired of God over and over and over, like, why are we in famine? I mean, like Saul's dead. Why are we still in famine? And the short story is God told David, you are in famine because of Saul. And so what we did in our group is we came to understand Saul's house represented the religious system. You know, we hear horror stories all the time about people who've been in the system. But what we said was, what was revealed to us is, what did you learn in Saul's house? How did they teach you to do communication? How did they teach you how to behave? How did they teach you how to think? And that residue has, it's like God took Israel out of Egypt, right? But he took them through the wilderness because he wanted the wilderness to be a process to take Egypt out of them before they went into the promised land. Because you can't go to the promise with Egypt still in you. And we can't have successful relationships when we still are acting out what we learned at Saul's house.
Well, that's the end of our broadcast today of Breaking Biscuits. We just want to invite you to tune in to listen to us each week, Thursday nights at 7 p.m. And we look forward to seeing you